that take us? Well, it takes us on to the subject to Ukraine. And I'm going to say a few people have said to us, UK column is spending quite a lot of time on Ukraine, but I think this is absolutely right, because if you think of the basics, if we end up that the West has achieved its aim in Ukraine, and Russia has been defeated, Putin deposed, who is going to be safe in the world from that Western machinery? Because the next target is China. But strange things are happening on the battlefield, and clearly the UK Ministry of Defence is very nervous. This is their report. I'm going to paraphrase it. If you have a look at it, it's all to do with small-scale combat. Let's make this really simple. We're in supposedly the final stage of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Thousands and thousands of men have died in this already. But where are we now? Small-scale combat and skirmishes, because the Ukrainians are not making progress against the Russian defences. And we have almost no reporting on the deaths on the Ukrainian side. So I'm going to say that those figures are focusing in around over 300,000 to possibly as many as 400,000. And this is dead we are talking about. But the BBC and the UK Ministry of Defence doesn't want to mention it. I've got this little video clip because aside from the fighting on the battlefield, the Russians have carried out some immense and very accurate strikes on facilities in the hinterland of Ukraine. This is Dnipropetrovsk, where the Russians launched several missile strikes that were very high precision on military facilities, including that of Ukrainian drone productions. And as you'll see from the size of the explosions and the fact that in just a few seconds there are explosions within meters of each other, you can see the tenacity of the Russian attack. Meanwhile, we've sent our best military men to speak to the Ukrainians, and it's our old friend, the UK Chief of Defence Staff, Radakin, who's been visiting Ukraine, and he's been discussing, discussing the counteroffensive. I suspect he won't be talking about cluster munitions, which the West have supplied, and Ukraine is now saturating the battlefield and civilian areas with these weapons. But this was the statement from the Ukrainian General Zaluzhnyi. He said that the meeting was constructive. We worked at one of the command posts. Admiral Radakin was familiarized in detail with the situation on the battlefield and with our offensive and defensive actions. We discussed the urgent needs of the Ukrainian army, and that is because they've made no progress, so they're after more weapons. I thanked our partners for their support. We continue the fight against the Russian aggressor until victory. Well, all of that sounds wonderful, but let's have a look at how Radakin is conducting the military in UK. And here's this report, which is truly astonishing, from the Mail. It says that the army has sparked a feminist backlash after the first transgender soldier to serve on the front line takes part in panel discussion about women in leadership. And not surprisingly, women in the army deeply concerned about this. And I'll leave our viewers and listeners to think about the implications and the fine photo that we've just shown on screen. But this gets deeper because, of course, this rot is now taking place inside Ukraine itself. And Debbie, you picked up this article. Ukraine military has a new transgender spokesperson. And this is the Kiev Post reporting that Sarah Ashton Kirillo has become one of the speakers of the defense forces. So we can see the Western agenda being driven deep into not only Ukrainian society, but also the military itself. And there's details here on screen about this. But it says that over the last month, as my role has evolved from a zero-line infantry soldier to one of the public voices of the armed forces of Ukraine, I've become ever more grateful for that strength, she said. Ashton Cirillo arrived to Ukraine in March 2022, soon after Putin began his invasion of the country in February. She initially worked in the country as a reporter, leading USA Today, leading USA Today to refer to her as the world's first openly transgender war correspondent. Alex, we got a few minutes available to us. This is no accident that these agendas are being unleashed inside the UK military, but also inside Ukraine. And of course, we know that the West has been burying into all aspects of Ukrainian society ever since really the troubles in Ukraine. What's your thoughts?
I think the key node there is Ashton Cirillo being appointed most recently by the Armed Forces of Ukraine as one of, not the, as has been misreported by some, but one of the soldier spokespersons for the armed forces, because it's hard to argue that is done in any other way than to say we are aping the Brits and the Americans who do this sort of thing. And you just outlined how. We don't have time to get into the Ashton Cirillo saga. Thank you particularly to Patrick Henningsen, our close colleague, for his, I think, bringing many people's attention to this person, first of all, who joined as a US correspondent, signed up with the troops. Interesting change of loyalty, started ranting and raving about the fascists, screaming at war memorials, and in a very Fahrenheit 451 twist, announced the recapture and charging of Gonzalo Lira, the very same correspondent in Kharkiv whom he/she had been calling on the Ukrainian secret services, the SBU, to track down on Twitter, while a journalist and a regular rank-and-file soldier. The chances of that not being an engineered situation is statistically zero to me.